Oh yeah, sexy biscuits. Nice.
London Blues 1975. A YouTuber's on the rise. Reviewing games late at night and sometimes friends used to bug him. Lord Wars Blues 1975.
Hey YouTube, Long Boys Post 1975, and just a quick little vlog that you could argue is kind of an additional to the topic that was last week. I kind of wanted to include this, so it's only going to be a short one. He says, he always thinks that, and then they get, every time, and then they get massively out of hand. But that's why I didn't include it. It was in my head and stuff like that in the last weeks, because that already hit like half an hour, and I'm amazed that people are still sticking around when I break 30 minutes. But it's just as much a part of the process that I have a massive amount of nostalgia for, and was an exciting experience as a kid in hindsight, because as a kid it was frustrating and, you know, and tedious. And that would be the journey back from the game store, because the journey back from the game store was just as big a deal as going there and almost being in the store and working out, you know, what you were going to buy, because obviously you basically could only afford pretty much one item, and once you bought it, because we never took stuff back then, you know, once you bought it you were stuck with it. That was your money gone. I mean, magazines were basically, we took them as the word of law. They had a massive amount of power and sway over us. And obviously, if you've got a couple of magazines such as we did, which is your Sinclair User and Crash, and if all three magazines roughly aligned somewhat in the same ballpark with the figure that they gave the games, you knew you were in good hands. But there was still a massive blind leap of faith, and it was those games that made the experience coming back from the game store that much kind of exciting, but also nervous, because you could have pissed away all your money at this point and an absolute pub, because the number of games I bought based on the cover, which would have been early Master Trike ones. I'm looking at you, Alien Kill. I'm looking at you, Alien Kill, where you were basically starting, because they were only $1.99, so I would have, what, 1984 would have been like 8 at this point, 8, 9, because remember, you were 2 different, you know, years in each of 8 in each calendar year. So yeah, you were jumping blind with those bad boys, and you could have had an absolute pup, and that was your pocket money gone, your savings gone, your birthday money gone, and stuff like that. So that would make the journey home even more exciting and even more nerve-wracking, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And this is why the journey home was, to me, just as much a big part of the experience as going to a store and purchasing a game as it was, you know, as it's coming back. Because there were a number of ways you probably would have gone to a store back in the day, either your parents or, you know, a relative, or, you know, parents of a friend or something like that, because sometimes they would make this a day out event, would take you to a game store, and you would go by car, is what the point I'm trying to say here, or you would go by public transport, whether it's train or bus, probably predominantly bus, can't talk, sorry. And then obviously there would be those of you who rode on a bike, but unless you're extraordinarily stupid or you're absolutely fantastically talented, you probably weren't going to read the back of the case over and over and over again while you're riding your bike home. But and obviously this to me is more for my ZX Spectrum days, so I would have been really, really young, because obviously we got our Spectrum in 1982. I'm probably repeating a bunch of facts if you watched last week's vlog, but excuse me, Windy Pops. Double bacon and egg McMuffin again. What can I say? It's a Wednesday morning. That's what I do on a Wednesday morning. It's Mackie D's. Why is my stomach still rumbling now? So yeah, it was a huge deal that when you would come back, regardless of how long the car journey was, which would always seem like absolutely eternity, maybe you took a game magazine with you. I never did. I never thought that far in advance to take game magazines with me, or possibly buy one at the store to read when I came home. I would just take the game I bought, usually just one game. I would just take that game. And I remember specifically the Mastertronic, or their second label, the 299 label, Mad Mastertronics Added Dimension game Zub, was got absolutely fantastic reviews, and it was one of those cases where it was a budget game that was superior quality to many full price games at the time. And I remember that getting great reviews, and I really wanted it. And that was that game store in Bath I talked about last week. So that would have been a 45-minute, at least on a good day, probably even longer back then when all cars were officially shite. What would we have had back then? Christ, we might have even had a Maxi. Yeah, look them up. So that would have been an incredibly long car journey, and you wouldn't engage in conversation with your brothers or stuff like that, because they would have their own games, and so chances are they'd be doing the exact same thing that you were doing, which is just obsessively looking cover to cover, you know, the same 4 sides of piece of paper, the same 2 sides of tape. Or maybe I was the only person who did this. I'm pretty sure, because they were doing it as well. I can't be alone on it, but I can just remember it was an incredibly exciting, because you're on your way home and you just wanted to get home to play this new game. And in the case of Zub, I knew it was going to be amazing. Or it was going to, you were incredibly nervous because you took a complete leap of blind faith, and you were genuinely nervous because this was all the money you had. And if that was the case, you could, because you know you'd had it happen to you before, you could be stuck with absolute shite. Again, Alien Kill by Mastertronic. Who remembers that turkey? I do, because I bought that. No screenshots on the back, just like the box art. That bit me in the ass, and that was it. That was the only game you had for, you know, until we discovered tape to tape, obviously, for weeks. Wasn't months like it was with consoles, because obviously the Spectrum budget games were incredibly cheap. But yeah, so you were incredibly excited or incredibly nervous, but then also it was just the tedium, which is, why is this car journey taking so long? And so the only thing you would do to kill that time is obsessively go cover to cover of whatever game you bought. Some games you bought, big box games, certain games like maybe Robocop, certainly Batman on the Spectrum, all the Ultimate Play the Game stuff. There was more in it, and they were beautiful packages, you know, especially Ultimate Play the Game. There was more in there for you to, you know, pour over again and again religiously. But like I said, with Zub, it was, you had nice box art on the front. You had like a comic book panel. He said some speech on it, which to me was always kind of cool. No, very few games, but very few games would have like speech bubbles on the front of the case. And unlike some of the games earlier on, where it was just literally, you'd read loading instructions and it would just be like Alien Kill. Aliens have invaded the planet. You are the lone survivor and must destroy them. That's it. That's all you could read. No screenshots on the back, other than look at the Mastertronic logo and read their address, copyright and shit like that. You had nothing to do. But yeah, a bit more was up, and obviously the screenshots on the back, absolutely fantastic. You know, like loads and loads of them, and they were actually ones for your system, because sometimes you would buy games and you would even know, looking at you, Yaya Kung Fu, that I bought from Boost, that these aren't even screenshots for your system on the back, but you'd still go over them. And I don't know, and this is the point I want to make, why it was such a big deal, such a big part of this process of buying a game that I have nostalgic memories for, was, and bear in mind, I do understand that you're like a kid, like 8 years old in this case for me, but not necessarily for Zub. But what were you going to get on the 25th time of going cover to cover, looking over every single inch of the box art, the loading instructions, the game instructions, the information on the side of the tape, the information on the side of the other tape, the back of the box, the screenshots, the little blurbs of information, if you were lucky, underneath the screenshots, and the information about the company? What were you going to get the 25th time pouring over all that information that you never got the 24 times before? But, and I don't know, was it a ritual? Is this what you felt you had to do? I mean, surely there were better ways to kill the time. I know, like, you're a kid and you get excited and nervous easily, but, I mean, I look back on this now with really warm, fuzzy, you know, sort of nostalgic goggles. But I'm not going to lie, as a kid, yeah, you know, it was like, why aren't we home yet? Or, oh, this is going to be shit. But yeah, so was it like at some point just looking at the same information again and again and again, you unlocked a secret puzzle and suddenly, oh, yes, I get it. Now I see the truth. I don't know. All I know is, and that's why I want to talk about this very briefly in just a quick little vlog, that the journey home from the game store, particularly when our mum drove us places, was just, that was what you did. that was how you killed the journey. And as I said, like, it would have been 45 minutes on a good day from Bath to our house, or for that particularly good game store we used to go in when game stores, like, you know, obviously Virgin Megastore wasn't around at place times like this, and it was, you know, little independent stores. But yeah, that was all you did. It was like a religious process, and you would do it every time you went out and bought a game, you know, and came home. That is what you did. I never thought to take magazines and stuff with me. And later on, when I used to get a bus downtown by myself, I just rinse and repeat the same process on a bus. Sometimes with Spectrum games, sometimes with Master System games, and sometimes with you know, the few Power Mega Drive games I bought, because I could buy them, and in the early days I would have the Japanese ROM on the cartridge anyway. But particularly when, I guess when you're a younger kid, then people around you on a bus would look at you and kind of understand it. But when you're an older kid, and so I would have been like 12 and shit, you know, with you know, when I was in Mega Drive Town, you know, and obviously 13, 14 when I was in SNES time, 15 maybe, 14, 15, I don't know. But what were they thinking? Which is, look at that, just look at that dumbass kid over there. All he's done for these 35 minutes since we left the bus station is just stare at the front, and then every now and then open it, read the manual, put it back, close it, look at the back of the case, and then rinse and repeat. Or maybe they just went, oh kids, look at the excitement going on in that poor child's mind right now. So I had to ask, am I the only person that this religious act process, am I the only person who did this, or did everyone literally with what you had purchased? And again, if you had a big box game, obviously far more could be gained from the experience than if you bought particularly a $1.99 Mastertronic game and stuff like that, especially in the early days. But am I the only person who did this, or what, did a whole bunch of you do it as well? Was the journey back from the game store as big a deal for you as it was for me? You know, like the excitement, the nerves, and you know, the pent-up frustration, which is, why aren't we there yet? So anyway, it was just a little bit of a vlog, because obviously I kind of wanted to talk about it last week, but things were getting a bit long and out of hand. But yeah, I'd love to know what you think, especially, you know, make me feel normal. I really hope that I'm not the only person who did this. But then having said that, it's a bit late now, isn't it? Anyway, as always, I'd love to know what you think. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you later.